Try to bring out is some of the challenges that we faced in the last 10 years while we were building this practice, right? So the first thing that we realized is very often we identify the right issues, but we solve the wrong problems, right? I'll give you an example. The single largest cause of unnatural deaths in Mumbai is people getting hit by trains when they cross the tracks, right? We lose about 8 to 10 people a day, right? So we have a big problem in our hand. But the solution that we have tried to do is to build more awareness. You touched upon that point. We keep building more and more awareness. The train is dangerous. I mean, is there anyone in the world who is expecting to survive a train accident, right? So we're solving the wrong problem. We are investing all the right intent. I'm not questioning the intent, right? With all the right intent, we're trying to solve the wrong problem, right? So what we need to identify is what is the kind of issue that we are trying to solve, right? I mean, and the kind of investments that were made in terms of building this awareness campaigns, and again, it was done in the wrong place, right? Most of these campaigns were run in railway stations, while most accidents don't happen in railway stations because people live by the railway tracks and they cross to go to school, go to work, and so the intervention should have happened there, while a lot of interventions were being done to passengers who are not the victims of this problem, right? So very often we don't identify the right problems, and hence we don't find solution. Classic case in financial inclusion. The amount of literature for improving financial literacy is tremendous, right? Now, when you go and meet, and which is the point that you made some time back, Anne made some time back, that keeping the beneficiary at the center. When you go and meet these people who are new to banking, what they don't understand is the process. So for someone who is struggling to make ends meet, you don't need to tell them why savings is important. They know why savings is important, right? Very often what we do is to go and tell people, you've got to save because saving is very important. They know that, right? What they're essentially saying is, I don't know how to use this thing. So somebody's got a debit card, he brings it to us and says, this is the first time I've seen my name written in English, right? To complicate that, the instructions that has gone to this person living in a remote village in Maharashtra is in English, right? So what we need to drive is not financial literacy. People know that. What we need to drive is process literacy, right? And sometimes we miss this simple point, and I can keep giving these examples on and on, right? I mean, these are all the kind of issues that we faced at various points in time, right? So we try and solve the wrong problem. So it's important to get the right kind of problems to solve. The second question then obviously is, so how do you get to it, right? And again, the point is to keep beneficiary at the center. And what has happened in research is quite startling. After knowing all the biases that we have, all the irrationalities that we have, we still use the same types of researches to understand people. We go and ask people for their opinion. And people have good opinions about things, right? I mean, if you ask people what they're going to do, if you ask any smoker what they're going to do in the next 1 month, of course he's going to quit, right? But that is, as Varun said at some point, it's because they don't know what they want to do, right? So asking people what they are likely to do in the immediate future or in the distant future is a bad question to ask. The other bad question to ask is, why did you do something? Because very often people don't know. So if you ask people, why did you do something, they'll give you a very rationalized answer. That need not be the reason why people chose something, right? So if you go and ask people, what is the kind of incentive that you would like, people will prefer cash incentives. But if you ask them, which is the incentive that you remember from the past, they might tell you something else where there was a great experience, right? So people don't necessarily know the answer. So one of the things that you should do in research is not to ask people for their opinions, but get them into decision-making context and see how they respond to that, right? It could be in real decision-making context, it could be even simulated decision-making context. We've had tremendous success using simulated decision-making contexts to ask people's preferences, right? Don't ask for their opinions, try and see how they respond to situations. And that's the other place, the point that you were making some time back, saying, how do we make this art more into science? Right? So one of the ways to do that is to create these lab environments where we are able to create it or simulate that situation, and then try different interventions and see how people respond to that. So that's the other area where we've had tremendous amount of success. So it's not to say that it will substitute for evaluation, but at least you are going in with a much more informed idea about how people are likely to respond to that. The third thing that has helped quite a bit is to step beyond behavioral economics, right? And I think behavioral economics is a little narrow framing. We are trying to say that decision problems can be solved with behavioral economics alone. I think there are many other fields which are studying decision making. So the more you borrow from them, and we found tremendous amount of application of understanding of how people's emotions decide their decisions a lot. So there is this entire area of affective neuroscience which is studying how emotions are impacting decision making. It has been tremendously useful for us. It tries to explain behavior in a much more realistic fashion rather than looking at it through the lens of economics. Again, the point you were making about risk. One of the ways you handle risk is to frame risk differently. But one of the critical areas that we found when we were studying risk is people don't evaluate risk as a number. They evaluate it more often as a feeling. So if you can get into the emotions of how people respond to a certain risk, it's the same thing, right? I mean, people are scared of sharks more than mosquitoes. Mosquitoes kill about 1 million people a year, sharks kill about 5 people a year. But that doesn't change our perception. So how we perceive risk is got nothing to do with the actual numbers behind it. It's got to do with the kind of feeling that we have. And the final point I have on this is that we should always remember that at the end of the day, all these insights has to translate into some kind of design and policy, right? It could be a design in communication, it could be a design of an intervention, it could be a design in the way a policy is framed. So bringing in design thinking pretty early into the system is very crucial. Now the way we manage that is to bring in a lot of designers as part of the team who are formally trained in design thinking, and then using them to interpret the situation in a way that can finally be translated into a design that can actually make an impact on the ground. So we have people who are design thinkers who have been trained in behavioral sciences. So that's the fourth thing. So these are some of the learnings that we have, and perhaps I'll stop here because I can keep going on. But these are some of the things that has helped us to create interventions which can actually be impactful on the ground. You wanted me to speak about ethics as well?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So that's. I was having this discussion in the morning with Anand and Varun. It's a strange. It's an irony that people ask behavioral science practitioners about the ethics of behavior change, because every policy, when a government brings out any policy, the idea is behavior change. So the right question should have been, why are policies not as effective? Rather than asking, why are you making it more effective? That's precisely what we should be doing, right? So I think sometimes this question is a little misplaced. We are trying to ask the wrong question because this is not mind control. Behavioral science is not mind control. It is a better informed way of understanding decision making and using it to influence behavior. And it's very easy to call it, this is government, big brother. No. It's just a more informed way of taking decisions. So there are a few things that you need to make sure that that is taken into account as far as ethics is concerned. One is to have the right intent to start with, right? You're not doing things with any wrong intent. That's the first thing. The second is to build evidence. And very often we take a lot of policy decisions without any evidence, right? So some time back somebody talked about saying, okay, we're going to have, we'll stop allowing people to sell single sticks and cigarettes. We'll now sell only packets. We've not evaluated whether it's going to reduce or increase smoking, right? So there are a bunch of decisions that we often take with all good intentions, right? The government's intentions are not bad in this, but we don't necessarily know whether that is right. And that's when it becomes unethical, because we're going to force people into doing something without necessarily understanding the implications. I mean, forget it not working, it could actually be counterproductive. So I think those are the things that we need to answer. The third is about disclosures. Now the good thing about nudges is that even when people are being told that this is the way we are trying to nudge you, for example, if something is made as a default and people are choosing that more often, even if they're told that this is selected as a default because it is a nudge, people's response does not change. So it's not because we are fooling people into doing something, it's actually because we're helping people to take those decisions faster, because they don't know. In the case of uncertainties, very often people don't know how to respond. So what you're actually giving them is a way to respond to an uncertain situation and take a decision. So disclosures are quite all right. So you can make disclosures and still get the same outcomes that you have. And the last one that I would say from an ethical point of view, make things so as to make decisions simpler, not to manipulate, right? I mean, so I think that's one of the filters through which every intervention has to go. So disclosures help in making people take certain decisions, but if the intent is to manipulate, then that's where I think you have to draw the line. And some of us who work both in the development sector and in the corporate sector have to be exceptionally cautious about these things, because there is a potential for this being misused, and there is no one who is regulating what we're doing. So some of us have to be exceptionally responsible for these things, and to make sure that we're doing things with the right intent, the right level of disclosures, and with the intent of simplifying rather than manipulating.